Hi, Russ Ryden here with Devoted Golfer TV. I'm at the PGA Merchandise Show in 2012 and I'm here with Chris Hillary. Chris Hillary owns Aerotech golf shafts. Aerotech makes a unique product. It's a carbon fiber composite shaft with hair-like steel wire wrapped around the outside of it. Tell me, Chris, how did you get involved with making golf shafts and with Aerotech?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, Russ. I have a manufacturing engineering degree, and when I got out of college, I went to work fishing in Alaska, and I came home for the summer and was playing in a golf tournament, and I got paired up with this guy that ended up being one of the founders of Aerotech Sports, and I was like 3 under through the first 5 holes, and he turned to me and said, "What do you do for a living, Chris?" And I said, "Well, I'm fishing, but I've got this degree." And he said, "Well, why don't you come in and see me on Monday morning?" And I went in, and I ended up working for that company for 9 years. Aerotech actually specialized we manufactured products such as bike components, helmets, knee braces, violin bows, and golf shafts, and hockey sticks was one of those sporting goods. Actually, at one point, Aerotech Sports was the second largest hockey stick manufacturer in the world. And about 6 years ago, I got the opportunity to purchase the golf division from the parent company, and I'm now the proud owner of a small business.
Aerotech shafts, they're all filament wound. How did you come to use filament winding, and would you explain filament winding a little bit to our viewers?
Sure, Russ. There's actually two main manufacturing processes to manufacturing golf shafts. One is called sheet wrap or table rolling, and the other one is filament winding. Sheet wrapping actually takes sheets of graphite and rolls them onto a mandrel to create the fiber layup. One of the downfalls of the sheet wrapping process is that each one of those sheets has to stop and start, and that creates seams along the length of the golf shaft. Filament wound golf shafts are produced by taking a toe of graphite, which is like a yarn only made up of unidirectional fiber, and that is wound back and forth onto a spinning mandrel, which is all computer controlled, and it creates a seamless golf shaft, which is much more uniform around the circumference. Its stiffness doesn't vary as much as a sheet table rolled product can.
So in the filament winding process, Chris, I always think of the strength of the shaft coming from the orientation of the fiber. So how do you get the tip to butt stiffness if you're wrapping like a corkscrew basically around the shaft?
So basically, Russ, you change the flexural properties of a golf shaft by changing the fiber angle along its length. If you want to stiffen the shaft, you run carbon fiber directly down the shaft. 0-degree fiber is called it, and that gives it its longitudinal stiffness. And you run fiber at 45-degree angles to give the shaft its torsional or twisting stiffness. So what we do is we vary the fiber angle with the filament winding process by changing the speed that the mandrel spins and the feed of the toe, of the graphite toe. And that then changes the fiber angle along its length, and we can control both stiffness and torsional stiffness and longitudinal stiffness in that way.
So if you're wrapping with filaments around the shaft as opposed to sheet wrapping, you're really not going to see any of the seams that are going to occur at the edges of the sheet along the stiffness of the shaft.
Yes, and that's the advantage of a filament winding process, is it does create a seamless structure. It's a continuous fiber from tip to butt, and it makes the shaft much more uniform in stiffness as you rotate the shaft. So it's a much more uniform flexing golf shaft.
So you finish filament winding the graphite, and then you wrap steel around the outside of the shaft? Explain that process a little.
Basically, I don't want to get too in-depth in it because it is a proprietary process, and it's a very difficult shaft to manufacture. I will say that it is a dual winding process and a curing process, so it's something that we have taken years to perfect, and fortunately, it's allowed us to create this steel fiber product.
So what kind of benefits do we get from putting a steel wrap around a graphite core? What does the player see?
Well, basically, we set out probably 10 years ago. We saw a void in the market, and that was composite iron shafts were not being accepted, especially from the stronger players. And so we set out about 10 years ago to create a composite iron shaft that could be embraced by stronger players. And we quickly figured out that we couldn't do that with strictly graphite. And there's a number of reasons, and there's a number of benefits to the steel and the shaft. One is when you're creating an iron shaft, we wanted to create several different weights so that the club fitter could fit the player into the correct weight that they would benefit the most from. And so when you start to create a heavier graphite iron shaft, you have to put a lot of graphite in the structure because graphite's very light. And when you get into the heavier weights, it gives the shaft a real thick wall thickness, and it loses its playability. It starts to get real boardy. So what we're doing by putting a full layer of steel on the surface, steel is 5 times the density of graphite, so it weighs 5 times as much. So we're able to manipulate the weight with 1/5 the amount of material, which means we can keep the wall thickness down and maintain the playability of the golf shaft. Another benefit of the steel fiber is that we put the steel fiber in what's called a hoop orientation. It's spiraled down the shaft. It's basically at 90 degrees to the longitudinal axis. Like I said earlier, you change fiber angle to get different flexural properties. Well, this hoop wind will hold a shaft round. It keeps it from ovalizing. So if you think of it as a garden hose and you were to bend that garden hose, it's going to want to flatten out and ovalize at its peak deflection. Well, this hoop-oriented steel fiber then holds the shaft round and keeps it from deforming in the golf shaft and at impact. It's making it more stable, like a steel shaft. We also put this steel fiber out on the surface of the shaft, so it's over a graphite core and it's all the way out on the surface of the shaft, which then increases the inertia of the golf shaft, making it more stable. So if you think of it as if you take a section of the graphite of the shaft and cut it, and then look down and think of it as a wheel, and that wheel has spokes that has weights that move in and out on the spokes. You take those weights and you move them all the way to the center, and you try and spin the wheel. Okay, then you take those weights and move them all the way out on the surface and try and spin the wheel. It's much harder to spin the wheel when those weights are out on the surface. So that shaft at impact is then resisting the twist and making it more stable in the golf swing and at impact.
We all know that the end game in this business is to get some things in play on the PGA Tour. So how does a little company like Aerotech end up with graphite iron shafts in play on the PGA Tour?
Well, I like to think that we've finally created the holy grail of golf shafts here, and we've created a composite golf shaft that can be embraced by the strongest players in the world. But it is an interesting story. I got a call from Peter Kuchar, who is Matt Kuchar's dad, and he had gotten fit for a set of our golf shafts at a club fitter, and they didn't have them in stock. They didn't have the right ones in stock, so he called me when he got home and said, "Hey, can I get a set of these?" And I said, "Well, sure, I'll send you out a set if the next time you play with Matt, you get him to hit them." And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, I got a call directly from Matt saying that I hit my dad's shafts and my dad's clubs, and I love them. Can you send me a set? And of course, I obliged. And as it turned out, he took them to the next event and put them directly into play. And he shot 63-63 in his first 2 rounds, and he ended up getting second place at the tournament. And we've all seen what he's done since then. That was in 2008, and he's been on quite a tear ever since.
So my understanding now, it's not just Matt. You've got a few more of them in play.
Yes, and I can thank Matt for that as well, because he's been a huge proponent for us, and we now have 5 main PGA Tour players playing it at the start of 2012. We've got a few of the Champions Tour players and a few of the LPGA players as well. So this shaft is truly getting embraced by some of the strongest players in the world.
So who'd have thought a few years ago that we'd be seeing carbon fiber composite products in the hands of PGA Tour players? I don't see too many strong amateur players looking at graphite. When do you think it will catch on?
We have already gotten the ball rolling, and we've seen the transition into the higher tech materials in several industries. We've seen it in tennis, we've seen it in hockey, and it's just a matter of time before composite iron shafts take over the iron category, and all players can take advantage of the composites in their irons.
Well, nobody's playing steel in their driver shafts, so I guess it is just a matter of time. And it's just a matter of getting the cost and torque ratio right for the stronger player.
Yeah, that's true. The torque properties of this shaft are very important. And to get the torques down to where you need them, you have to use the higher grade materials. And you also have to lay the shaft up properly. So as the material science advances, and we have more high grade materials available to us, and our manufacturing processes get refined, then we can now create a shaft that can hold up to the swings and the forces generated by the stronger players.
So, Chris, one of the products that I really love is the Player Spec, an ascending weight shaft. For those of you that don't know about ascending weight shafts, as the shaft is getting shorter in your shorter irons, it's getting heavier in an ascending weight product. The head is getting heavier, the shaft gets heavier. You see it in very, very few models. You see Ping using some ascending weight technology on some of their models. Do you see this ascending weight technology getting more of a foothold in the business?
Well, Russ, that's hard to say. There's definitely an advantage to it. You end up with your longer irons being lighter weight, a little easier to hit, get the ball in the air, and then your shorter irons getting heavier and getting more controllable into your scoring irons. One of the drawbacks of the product is that it's pretty expensive and difficult to manufacture. For one, there's a different shaft design for each shaft in the set, and that shaft gets heavier by 2 grams as it gets shorter for each club. Well, there's a tolerance to weight in production, so let's say it's plus or minus 3 grams. Well, then you can have crossovers, so what you have to do is you have to try and get your tolerances as tight as you possibly can, and then you sort the set. And it's actually a dual sorting, and it's a dual sorting process, because you're not only have to control the weight really critically, but also the stiffness progression through the set. So these shafts have to be manufactured with very tight tolerances, and then they have to get sorted in the factory. So that ends up to be a much more expensive product.
Chris, you introduced a new driver shaft a couple of years ago, the Claymore. I don't know very much about the Claymore. Tell me a little about it.
Well, the Claymore is our first offering in the super light high performance driver shaft. This shaft is manufactured with it's a high modulus Microtex carbon fiber. What that is it's a lighter, stiffer, thinner fiber, which allows us then to apply more layers onto the golf shaft and devote more layers to the stability of the shaft, lowering the torque with 45-degree angles, stiffening the tip. So what we've created with this product is we offer it in a 48-gram and a 60-gram version, and this is a 48-gram shaft that can hold up to the forces from stronger players. And it's a very controllable, super lightweight golf shaft.
Super lightweight, it's the buzz. Where do you see lightweight shafts going? Do you think there's a real future for them?
I do. What's happening is that there's now, from a design standpoint, there's now more. The materials are getting better, and there's more materials available to us. So it's allowing us to get lighter and also make the shaft stable. Where before, all the super lightweight shafts had too high a torque, or the tip was too soft, and were uncontrollable, and stronger players couldn't play them. But that's different now.
Well, Chris, thanks for being here on Devoted Golfer TV.
Thanks for having me, Russ.